But they said she is a social butterfly. She smiles at everyone. Her motor skills are amazing. She's just picture perfect health. 4 months old. She's 15 pounds, 24 inches long. Granddaddy's about to buy her car. So it's going to be good.
So, you want to live salty? Well, stay tuned, because it's the Salty Locals Podcast, coming to you from North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And now, here's your salty host, Jim Shorten.
Hey, welcome to the Salty Locals Podcast. I'm Jim Shorten, a husband, father, Jimmy Pop to 5 wonderful grandchildren, and a local realtor here in North Myrtle Beach. We have a special show for you today. I'm naming it Pack Gwinn at the Beach because we've got the one and only Pack Gwinn on the show with us, and we're super excited about that. Pack Gwinn is my special guest today, and he's hosted and produced his syndicated radio show Pack Gwinn at the Beach since 2001, and he's the voice of my mid-show advertisement for Jim Shorten Homes. So without delay, let's get Pat on the show and hear about his famous syndicated radio show that's all about Carolina beach music. Please welcome Pat to the show. Hey,
hello,
Pat.
Jim.
Welcome to the show, buddy.
Well, man, it is an honor to be here with you and Kim, and I deeply appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I thank you for that. Unfortunately, my sidekick's not with me today. She's
That's
out.
why it's so quiet in the house.
She's
I can see where the show is going.
She's running a few errands and doing some good stuff for us out there. So,
well, you and I both are very blessed with the wives that we have. So I commend you and salute my wife as well for putting up with this career for so long.
Amen. Denise is a wonderful lady. Indeed.
She is that.
And, of course, my little sidekick, wifey, Kimmy, as well.
Yeah.
My soulmate.
There you go.
So, hey, Pat, let's talk about your roots. Where were you born and raised?
Well, first of all, I was born in a big state of Florida, Panama City. I don't remember being born. I remember from photographs that around the age of 2 or 3, we moved to upstate South Carolina, where my dad was originally from, in a small town called Union, South Carolina.
Okay. Sadly,
that claim to fame is from Susan Smith drowning the 2 little boys.
Ooh.
So now everyone has the map in their forefront. We started radio when I was very early on, Jim. I was very flattered. To be honest with you, I was almost giddy when I was in the first grade, actually, to go on a field trip to the radio station back in December of '66.
Wow.
They had this program, Jim, called I think Tell Santa What You Want. It was sponsored by Humphrey's Bargain Center. It was way before Walmart was thought of. It was a mom and pop 5 and dime kind of place, and it was sponsored by them. And what they would do, and I learned radio advertising real quickly, and marketing was, you have all these kids come in an art link letter form, you have the host go around the room and, hey, what would you like for Christmas? What do you want to do when you grow up? And that's where it all started for me. I fell in love with radio and watching how it was all working. And during that time, I actually told the guy that when I grew up, I was going to come back and work for him, and I did.
Wow. What a story. Jeez.
Yeah, and it's God's truth. It's he became a mentor. He became a very close friend to me. And Ed Osborne, God rest his soul.
Okay.
He and Jimmy Coggin started the Clemson Radio Network back in the 50s and 60s before radio networks started.
Wow.
So he had a very, I learned a lot from Mr. Osborne, and he was like a second dad to me.
Mm-hmm. Jeez. That's an amazing story. So after that, how did your life journey steer you down to the North Myrtle Beach area?
Well, in 2000, 2001, I was working at a radio station in Abbeville, South Carolina, where I had met Denise,
mm-hmm.
and we married and settled there for maybe 15 years or so. In 2001, I was doing a midday to afternoon shift on WZLA 92.9 in Abbeville, Greenwood, Anderson. The program director and the owner came in and said, it's wonderful to have these bits and stuff that we're doing and all the people that call and talk. And, we'd like to spice things up a little bit. It was an oldies format.
Uh-huh.
And he said, do you know anything about beach music? And I said, I love beach music. He said, would you be interested in hosting a Friday at the beach? And that's what they called it. They got the local telephone company and a couple of restaurants to sponsor it. And from there, we did like everyone else and made a T-shirt. There are a few of those still around, if you can believe that. And we did that. And the sister station to that radio station said, hey, we'd like to carry that as well. And then we figured out a way that way back in the day, all we did was run a reel of tape and just copied the show live. And then we shipped it over to Newberry, and they aired it on Sunday or Saturday or Sunday.
Oh, okay.
And then from there, more stations asked, and then it just became a syndicated situation.
Wow. So it was called Friday at the Beach, huh?
It started out as Friday at the Beach, and then I went to Weekend at the Beach because some stations were carrying it Saturday or Sunday. And then, in infinite wisdom, my good friend John Walter says, you really just need to put your name in front of it because there's stations, for example, WKTE in King, North Carolina that carries it on Wednesday. Augusta carries it on Monday. There's a station in Indiana that carries it on Tuesday. West Virginia on Thursday. So it's every day somewhere it's being played. So we had to get rid of a time frame in the name. So that's how the vein at Gwinn at the beach came about.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, man.
So all in all, how long would you say you've been DJing?
Jim, I started when I was 14, believe it or not. I grew up about 4 blocks from the radio station. I could walk to the station.
Okay.
And Mr. Osborne remembered that conversation because I reminded him of it every day, I think. And at the age of 14, the University of South Carolina at Union, they had a Union branch at the time. It's now called USC Upstate.
Uh-huh.
They were playing, I believe, the National Basketball Class 1, whatever the smallest version of the basketball national title games. And the guy that was running the show, I was actually sitting there watching him do it. I was trying to learn how to run the board. And he became sick. And as fate has it, Mr. Osborne says, do you remember what to do when this says this, when that says this, when that does this? I said, yes, sir.
Wow.
And he allowed me to sit there. And at the age of 14, I started. And by the time I was 20 years of age, I was doing their morning show while attending college.
Yeah, I saw.
So started quickly.
Yeah, you were like the youngest morning show host, right?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, I saw
that. Was fun.
So
it's pretty cool to sit there and do your high school homework and take requests all the time at the same time. And then you go to school the next day and Rhonda says, why didn't you play my song?
And you said to yourself, geez, I don't know why. I really should have.
I guess I should have because you turned out to be a pretty nice looking lady.
That's right. Yeah. So obviously, at the age of 1, you had this interest in radio and DJing.
And in the first grade. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was 6 at that time. I remember there are a couple of things that I'm involved in, and as the show goes on, maybe we'll touch on it.
Right.
I was asked to write this history, my musical journey history, our soul music history. It's a book that's coming out, and the proceeds go to helping artists who have no insurance that worked with Motown, Stax, and things like that. Mm-hmm. It's being published in the UK and in Australia. There are some incredible writers in there. Betty Wright, the cleanup woman, she wrote before she passed away a couple of months ago. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of artists that are tied in there, along with radio personalities, and they were kind enough to ask me to be a part of it. And part of what I wrote as it began was, the way I set up the first chapter was, looking out the window, my dad yells at me, you need to eat your breakfast before you're late for school. I was listening to the radio. I was listening to Bill Stribling And I was mesmerized, to be honest with you, Jim, because at that age, 6 years old, you're thinking, good gosh, how did that band get in that room, play that song, and get out of there and the next band start?
You're so right.
I didn't realize there were records. So,
I think I used to think the same. Yeah. And now that you mentioned that, I think I had the same feeling. Yeah, as a kid.
It's like, gosh, that's pretty magical. It's like that theme song when I came on the air, that pixie dust that was going on. So all that works out well, and you start to think of, gosh, I really love to do this. And that's where the fever came about, as Billy Scott would say. Mm-hmm. That's where I get the fever.
Oh, okay. So beach music, Carolina beach music. So how did you fall in love with that, and what's it mean to you today?
Well, I think I fell in love with Billy Scott when I was doing the show there in Abbeville, the Friday at the Beach. Billy Scott was driving through Augusta, and the signal would reach down into McCormick and Augusta, on the fringes of Augusta, the city limits. And Billy heard it, and he heard one of his songs come on. Mm-hmm. And he called, and I thought somebody was just, pulling my leg, that, oh my gosh, this artist is actually calling me. Right. But it's truly Billy Scott. So I put him on the air, and he's talking, and gosh, he just kept talking as Billy could do. And it wasn't 30 minutes later, he walks up to the front door of the station. He brings me a new release of his. We sit and we talk, and I fell in love with what a charismatic, caring person. And that smile of his just never went away. Mm-hmm. He talked, he smiled, he just was the example of what beach music was like. And growing up in small towns, I'd never seen anyone with quite the personality that Billy had. Wow. And to fall in love with that, there are a couple other groups that are very famous in that area. The Swinging Medallions were 15 miles away. Oh, wow. My wife, Denise, had directed the wedding of Sean, who is now the lead singer of the Swinging Medallions. Oh, okay. John and I became very good friends. Dibble Cooper, who played with them, Carol Bledsoe, Joe Morris, all those guys lived in Greenwood. So I got to meet that royalty in my mind. It was royalty. Right. And just fell in love with what they had done. I listened to their remakes of, for example, Shaky Ground, Double Shot of My Baby's Love, finding out the history of Double Shot, that it was actually banned from radio stations because in the Bible Belt, radio stations didn't want you to mention the fact that you were hungover from the night before of your all-night drinking. Oh. So they came out with a different version that did not have hangover. It came out as the worst night I'd ever had. So some of that history behind it just fascinated me, and I said, man, I'd love to just dig into this a little bit deeper. So in the upstate, there are other groups in Greenville, Spartanburg area. The Marshall Tucker Band, as you know, Doug Gray lives here in Myrtle Beach from the Marshall Tucker Band. Wow. I'm sure he's thrilled that I just told everyone that. But I had gone as a kid working at that station in Union. A guy that worked there, Alan Bolton and Lynn Sinclair, were doing sound and marketing for the Marshall Tucker Band long before they were signed with Capricorn and RCA. So I would go up and watch those guys rehearse as they began to get their niche of Southern rock. And I sat there and watched Toy Caldwell and Doug Gray and those guys, heard it in a love song. Can't You See, the last singing cowboy, as they wrote those right in front of me. So it was quite an adventure to see how that works.
You're not kidding. No wonder you got so into it.
I got into it right in it. You thought I was just a guy drinking vodka and OJ sitting at Decker's. No, I got some history. That's
actually a good segue into where I was headed. So you and I met, and I met your lovely wife, Denise, about 5 years ago at Decker's, where everyone met back then.
True. Scott and Amy have done an amazing job with that place. And I have to give kudos to where it's due. Mm-hmm. A lot of people think that radio DJs don't support one another, and a lot of them don't. But I will say this. Ray Scott has to be the premier patio DJ of all time. There is no way on earth that I would get up there or feel like I could get up there and entertain people the way that Ray Scott does with Riptide Radio. Yeah. I mean, I've got to give him credit where credit is due. He can motivate the crowd. he can convince you that you can drive on that flat tire.
Yeah.
I mean, he is that great when it comes to entertaining people, and people flock to that thing on Friday afternoons.
Yep.
And a large reason for that is Mike Graham, Scott Beasley, and Ray Scott, and I just give them all the credit in the world.
Yep, the threesome, no question about it. And Ray has definitely got one heck of a deck party on Friday afternoons at Decker's, and that's been going on for quite some time. That's for sure.
It sure has. Yeah.
So,
but we did meet at Decker's and enjoyed it. We, I fell in love with you and Kim. You were one of the original sponsors when Pat Gwinn of the Beach syndicated out further.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, we were on 94.9 The Surf.
Yep.
And some other stations in the area, and I was very fortunate to have you as a sponsor and deeply appreciate it.
I remember, Pat. I did. Now, was there a countdown when you had that show on 94.9? Was that?
We did a countdown.
Yeah, I remember a countdown.
Yeah.
I thought I did.
And I believe you're giving away a little secret. There's a countdown coming back, but that's down the road.
Okay, cool. Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Sure.
But I'll tell you what, that was, Pat Gwinn at the Beach was one of our very favorite radio shows ever. I mean, Kim and I
appreciate that.
We would be down on the beach because it was like when we first moved down here, so we were still very much in vacation mode. And we'd be down there with all our friends from Ocean Drive and just be blasting the show, all over the beach.
Yeah.
Tell us about that show.
Those were some great times back then. We had times change, and the radio station went through a lot of changes, as you know, and business models change, and it's changed yet again. Mike Worley's doing a tremendous job. He and Chad Zane on Saturday with the countdown now. There was a time, I can't remember, if you can imagine this threesome, Billy Scott, the legend,
right?
Billy Smith, John Hook, and I all worked together at the Surf at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was quite an adventure. Jeez. I learned so much from those two. It was Billy, I'm telling you, Billy Smith forgot more than I've ever known about music. I mean, he was just such a character on the air. He brought energy to the industry. He brought his crow's nest, what was it, where he was perched high above OD, watching down on the beach and doing his shows. And, he just lived life to its fullest, and he made you want to be out there. It wasn't a thing of, oh, Billy's on. No, you wanted to hear it because you got the fever and wanted to go out there and be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the feeling we had when we would listen to your show.
Well, I deeply appreciate that.
No question
Hopefully that
about
still
it.
feels that way.
Yeah.
The show, it's grown. Well, I hope you do, because it's grown a great deal. We've changed it a little bit, Jim, and here's why. The show now airs in major markets around the country. It's not just a show that's on regional stations. The show, believe it or not, is on the number one market in the country. We're now on in New York City.
Wow.
We're on in Seattle, Toronto, and I can give you a list. I mean, it goes on and on. London, Costa Rica, Ireland, Australia.
International.
Yeah, it is. And when you try to explain to people in New York, Philadelphia, they understand a little bit, because that's the Philly soul sound that we try to put in there.
Right.
But for the majority of people that are, for example, in Kansas City at 102.7, I try to keep all those straight in my head, they've never heard of beach music, but they love what it is.
Yeah.
So when I try to explain, and, General Johnson came up with one of the best versions of the answer of what beach music was of all time. If you ever watch the documentary, Under the Radar, it talks about it was white people sneaking into clubs, listening to R&B music.
Mm-hmm.
They had heard it on WLAC in Nashville with John R. They had heard other DJs around the country, Whoa, Indiana, and others playing this urban music. It was called urban music. You couldn't classify it that way now, or radio station towers would be burnt and torn down.
Right.
But, everyone's so part of the United States of the offended at the moment.
Right.
So the key part was that the music became universal, and all these kids were coming down here on college vacation, and finding this music and slipping into clubs like at Charlie's Place over in Myrtle Beach and Fat Harold's, Fat Jack's. I mean, the list is just on and on of all the different places where people fell in love with it. And we started the show and we tried to change it up a little bit. And I was told by a couple of consultants that, primarily my wife, that you needed to change it up because if you don't have the Motown, if you don't have national recognition of artists, and I started thinking, you know, if we play the national artist and bring beach music along with it, we can get into the bigger markets.
Right.
And that's what happened. We picked up Chicago, New York, and the major cities.
Well, that was a good move.
Yeah. Denise is a pretty smart girl.
Yes, she is. Well, you've met just about all the artists of beach music, I think, in my mind. But who's some of your favorites?
You know, I fell in love with Danny Woods, and I was so honored that Elaine, his wife, asked me to speak at his celebration of life. To meet Danny and to know Danny personally, and to see someone that just, you know, every day was fully tasted. He never met a stranger. He never, ever had a crossword toward anyone, to my knowledge. And that became like gosh, I'd really like to be like that guy. And in time, I hope that it will evolve into that type of personality. Some of the biggest names I ever met, for example, Lee Greenwood on the countryside, because I did country radio for a while. Garth Brooks, Reba, and some of those. George Strait, brought him on stage many times in the
one
upstate.
of my favorites.
Oh, he's a class act.
Yes.
Aaron Tippin, who is from the upstate of South Carolina.
Good old Aaron.
Yeah, some of the, you know, nationally known artists such as Dionne Warwick, I was thrilled to death to have on. Let's see, we've got interview pieces with Cuba Gooding Sr. before he passed away, Russell Tompkins Jr., the Stylistics. I mean, it's just a list of all the people that over the years, and luckily I still have most of those recordings. Many of those guys have passed and gone. But it is just a joy to have met them, to talk with them and get to know them a little bit and the stories behind the music. And I think a lot of people need to understand that whoever sat down and wrote that song, there was a story deep inside them that had to be brought out.
Right.
Jackie Gore, for example, told me that he sat down at his kitchen table one day and started writing on a napkin, "I love beach music. Always have, always will." He started naming the song 60 Minute Man Up on the Roof. And he just said, you know, he was giving back to the people. He was giving back to many of the kids that were coming to see them. Their parents had come to see them as the Embers years and years before. I mean, let's face it, the Embers have been around 60 plus years. Catalina's, all those big groups have been around for generations now.
Yes.
And the younger crowd, the Medallions, for example, that tradition will continue. When you have a group like the Tams, Charles and Joe and Little Red, who started at the age of 7 and continues today at the age of 51 or 52, and his children are now learning the craft. It just gives you hope that it's all going to continue for a very long time. Yeah,
that's for sure. That's for sure. Hey, Pat, stay with us. We got to take a break after our break from our sponsor here. And we'll find out more about Pat's current situation and what's coming next. And I'll bet you'll recognize the voice.
The Salty Locals podcast is sponsored by Jim Shorten Homes, serving all your real estate needs across the Grand Strand. Live salty, live local. Call Jim today at 301-503-2700. 301-503-2700. Jim Shorten Homes, a proud affiliate of Eagle Realty.
Wow, what a great ad. Thank you, sir.
Wow, what a great subject matter.
So, hey, I understand you recently purchased a radio station out of Indianapolis, Indiana called 105 The Wave. Why don't you tell our listeners about that? Well,
I have a couple of them that we're working on. 105 The Wave was a brainstorm of Austin Douglas, who is Indiana. I always say that wrong. I don't know why. But I go into that, and he had that station up there and started mixing in beach music. And he finally says, I'm ready to unload this. And I said, I'll be glad to take it.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did was create 105 The Wave. It's all classic Carolina beach music. Very limited advertising. Jim Shorten Homes still runs on there. But what we do is...
Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome. What we do is the classics, and I went in, and I hope you like this. I went in, and after a song from Billy Scott, for example, or before the song from Billy Scott, I'll have a snippet of Billy talking about the song. It's kind of like an extended version of the syndicated show that's just 24 hours a day.
Right.
And we just milked it for what we could, all the pieces that we had to fill in there to make it user-friendly. We take requests, and we get a lot for Bobby Smith, The Four Souls, and some of the classic stuff such as Maurice Williams, Zodiacs. Those are the types of songs that a lot of stations don't play anymore. It's all the new music that's coming out of KHP and some other places. So some of the true stuff that was during that Renaissance period of beach music from the 70s and 80s is what this station focuses on.
Okay. Gotcha. So let's talk a little bit about internet radio stations. Our listeners probably listen to them here and there, but probably don't know exactly what they're all about. What are they all about?
Well, the best thing about internet radio, and I can throw you the sales pitch real quickly, it's very similar to a podcast.
That's what I was thinking.
You know exactly how many people are listening, where they're listening, how long they listen, how many unique listeners. And that's something that terrestrial radio cannot do. It cannot tell you how many people listen.
Gotcha.
You can have an Arbitron book. You can pray that the people that have that book are being honest and saying, oh, yeah, I'm listening to this station or that station. But to prove that that theory is truly not so much, there's a radio station in Georgetown that's been off the air for 5.5 years that shows up in the ratings every time.
Wow.
So that tells you that something is wrong with that particular system.
Mm-hmm.
With internet, you have a designated IP address. A stream is going out. The artists are being paid because you have a stream telling you how many listeners you had.
Right.
You have that information of where they were listening. Make sure those royalties are paid through RIAA, CCAP, ASCAP, and all those things. And I even add Nabendigo because there's so many of them now. But you do what you have to do in order to make sure that you're protecting the songwriter, the artist, and make sure they get the royalties that they desperately deserve and need after producing what I think is something from their soul instead of it being ripped off by a lot of other people.
Right. Well, that's good to know. How popular are these stations?
We're on a station in Seattle, Washington, at Gwinn at the Beach. It came in number 9 in their ratings.
Okay.
They air that show Friday evenings at 7. At that time, last Friday evening at 7, there were 30,418 listeners.
Jeez.
At that particular time on that station.
Mm-hmm.
So that made me feel like, maybe I need to speak a little more clearly. So so it makes you understand that, there are bigger markets than where you're sitting in North Myrtle Beach or in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
So it says a lot, and God only knows what we have in New York, and here's why. You were talking about internet radio.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of radio stations today know the need, feel the need, and understand that there is a need for streaming. When you drive away from North Myrtle Beach or any town that you're listening to a terrestrial station through Florence, Columbia, Greenville, Spartanburg, Asheville, wherever, you're going to go 30, 45 miles and that station disappears.
Yep.
With internet, you can have that anywhere on demand from your phone, Bluetooth into your car. All cars now have Bluetooth technology. That station is with that listener. You have to make sure you keep that listener happy because they can find someone else very quickly.
Wow.
But it makes it a worldwide situation.
Yeah.
We can look at our Cool Winds, for example. I'm co-owner with Katie Bennyfield on the Cool Winds radio station.
Right.
I almost said network, and I'll get into that in a second. And we have the numbers showing us where the cities are. Raleigh is our number one market, followed by North Myrtle Beach,
Mm-hmm.
and oddly enough, Greensboro and Tampa, Florida.
Wow.
And then somehow in Kokomo, Indiana, we have a couple of dozen people that listen every day. So you can tell where your audiences are, and quickly you can just do a shout out for someone in those cities, and suddenly you'll see numbers and phones just start lighting. Oh, how did you know I was listening? So it really gives you some credibility. It gives that audience the feel that somebody really cares and wants to reach out and mention them. And I said network. What we did with Cool Winds, we were one day I was sitting there on the air, and I had this guy in Augusta that carries our show on the Soul Mine 92.9, and says, you know, I like Pat Gwinn at the Beach a great deal. And I said, well, I'm flattered. Thank you very much, yada, yada. And he said, I'd love to have you every day. And I said, you can't afford me every day. And the vanity kicked in real quickly, but he really could. So we came up with a way for him to take our stream. So in those stations, they're now able, if they have software in their computers, for example, if they're running station playlists, all the other different types of platforms in order, radio DJ and things like that, with that software, they can pull our stream and run it on their station.
Okay.
At the moment, the Cool Winds radio network consists of 2 stations in Alaska, Boston, Cape Cod, Newcastle, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Indianapolis, Kokomo area. We're on in Washington, D.C., Hancock, Maryland, and Myrtle Beach, all at the same time, and in Whiteville, North Carolina on Cool Oldies. So all those are pulling that midday show. We created a network out of our internet station.
Wow. So tell our listeners, you know, let's say they listen to the podcast, they get off the podcast, say, hey, I want to listen to Pat Gwinn at the Beach. I mean, how do you connect to internet radio? Let them know how you connect, and how would they get to find your show?
Well, it's very similar to you directing people to your podcast.
Okay.
To find Pat Gwinn at the Beach, you can go to patgwinnatthebeach.com. There's a full website there that we designed. You can go to Cool Winds with a K, KOOLWINDS.com. There are 4 or 5 different players on there. If you're looking for the syndicated show, Pat Gwinn at the Beach, it is on iHeart. It is on Google Play, Apple Play, all available for download and streaming 24 hours a day.
Oh, okay.
So you can get that. In our New York facility, for example, we were talking about other things that I was doing. I really don't know when I sleep now that I'm talking about this. I do 10 until 3 every day in New York City, all from the comfort of my home. Technology is amazing.
Yes.
We're on 107.9, 95.1, an HD signal that goes into New York City, one that goes into Staten Island, and the other is into the city of Philadelphia. So we're doing that 10 to 3 every day. There's another station called Hall of Fame Music Radio. That's an internet station that feeds 4 or 5 terrestrial stations in Pennsylvania, Alaska, and some others that we're on from 10 until 1. So I do take a nap on occasion. But the best part, Jim, the reason why, and people say, why are you doing all that? And this is why. And I shot Lisa Hudson, Mike Taylor, and Rick Strickland, along with a few other artists, pretty well in the last couple of weeks. Those radio stations in New York, Philadelphia, and those big markets are now mixing in Carolina Beach music into their daily regular format, and not just when I'm on the air.
Wow.
So what we tried to do, you may hear the Doobie Brothers going into a Craig Woolard song. So it's we're trying to take the music of the Carolinas and make it worldwide. And that has been a goal that Billy Scott had. It was a mission that Billy was on. Sadly, he did not get to see it in his lifetime. And I think about this a lot. And I care a great deal for you and Kim, and think the world of you both. But I look at all the events that have gone on in the last 6 months. The world has changed a great deal.
Right.
We lost an icon like Kobe Bryant. We had a pandemic that closed down the world for 100 days. We have rioting and racial tension due to the death of a man while in police custody. So we're all learning to adjust and to focus on things. I look
Right.
back and think of Paul Craver being gone too soon, Dink
Right.
Perry, Danny Woods, our good friend Tommy Black.
Yep.
You know, those people were here, and their music will live on forever.
Yep.
You know, it was that's what makes you feel like what they're doing matters.
Oh, yeah.
And you want to make sure that that legacy continues. And as long as, you know, I told Elaine, Danny's wife, I said, as long as I have a radio show, Danny Woods will never, ever be forgotten.
Yep. That's true. That's true. He was your buddy. I remember at the
Yeah.
OD Pavilion seeing him down there.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was the last time I saw him sing.
Yeah.
But you were up there on the stage with him, and
Yeah.
when H. Lee was still around. Yeah, what a day
Yes, sir.
that was, huh?
It was a celebration, big time. It was, they were doing a fundraiser for someone that had some surgery.
Mm-hmm.
But Danny came, and I don't think there was a dry eye in the house when Danny sang a cappella Amazing Grace.
Right.
I'll never forget it.
Goosebump moment.
In fact, I tell you, they come back when you just think about it. And I have a video of it. And I can still see Tim sitting there and you there.
Yeah.
I think we all had our photos made together. And, you know, those are things that you cherish.
Yes.
I've got so many of those type photos in my home, in my home studio. Believe it or not, you're in my studio at home every day. So it means a great deal that you care enough about the music and the industry and what's going on in North Myrtle Beach. And guys, I'm telling you, if you're looking for someone that is going to represent you the way that you want to be represented, whether it's buying or selling, you need to get in touch with my friend Jim Shorten. There you go.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Hey, tell us about Cool Winds and your partnership with Katie.
You know, Katie came down like a lot of people for SOS a few years ago. Katie was from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay.
She graduated from Meredith College, I believe it is.
Mm-hmm.
She got the bug. She had been a DJ in other mediums, such as electronic medium, from what I understood.
Mm-hmm.
She came down and says, you know, I like what you do. I'd like to partner and see what we can do to create a radio station together. And I laughed it off. And 2 months later, there was an LLC formed, and we have celebrated 3.5 years of doing this now.
Wow.
So we have we built a radio station. It sounds pretty darn good. It matches pretty much anything in this market, and with the connections I have in major markets, we have a lot of voices that you would hear in New York or the bigger cities on that station. So we were very fortunate to have Sean Ryan, Chris Scott, and some other nationally known DJs on the station.
Whoa, that is really cool. So what plans do you and Katie have for the future?
Well, I really don't know. You know, this time of life that we're all going through, I just turned 60 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago Monday when
Wow.
this airs. So you look at it and you think of my good buddy Tommy, who passed away in his 70s. But then I look at my friend Tuff, who wasn't 50 yet.
Right.
And it just breaks my heart. And you'd start to realize, you know, you got a granddaughter who is just now turning 4 months old. You've seen her twice due to your work schedule, due to COVID, whatever reasons. And you have to just say, what do I want to do?
Right.
I think we're going to focus primarily on the network part to answer your question.
Mm-hmm.
We will continue with a little bit of beach music on Cool Winds, but it is a station that we call Carolina Beach Music, Classic R&B, and Today's America's Greatest Hits. So it's kind of a mixture of things where we bring in the national artists and tie them in as well,
Right.
and salute beach music with it. So the syndicated show continues to grow. That is under the umbrella of Cool Winds Entertainment Group, and that's how all that began back a few years ago.
Cool. That's awesome. So you've actually led me into all my segments here, like a good DJ would. But so I was very next going to talk about you becoming a new grandpa, and obviously Denise being a new grandma. And in fact, you sent me a video last night. I think it was about 10:30 of Raylan tasting food for the very first time.
She wasn't enjoying those tears as much as they thought she would. she can put a little face on you.
So
but it was kind of a precious moment. Those are the things you live for, and you just, they're going to go away, and then I'm not going to have them. So I've got to cherish every bit of those moments that I can get a hold of.
So it's your first. So
it is.
Tell us what this new addition has meant to you and Denise.
Well, we had, that's our first grandchild.
Right.
The first one to get married. Jordan is our oldest son.
Mm-hmm.
He and Devin married a few years back and had this baby. It takes your breath away to think about all they went through to have this child.
Right.
Sadly, there was one prior that went to rainbow status.
Right.
And that was very hard. And to see your child and daughter-in-law struggle and wonder what's going to happen next. And then the wonderful news, hey, we're expecting again. And then you're walking on eggshells praying that things will work out well. And, she went to the doctor yesterday. She got 2 shots. Her lungs work extremely well from what I understand.
Good.
Yeah, they gave her one of those shots that hurt, so she let them know she was there. But they said she is a social butterfly. She smiles at everyone. Her motor skills are amazing. She's just picture perfect health. 4 months old. She's 15 pounds, 24 inches long. Granddaddy's about to buy her car. So it's going to be good. She's going to have it made, I tell you. You know what it's like.
Yeah, there's nothing like spoiling them, right?
Oh, yeah, you can send them right back home. Yeah, but we have 2 other sons. Hunter got married. He went out to Phoenix, Arizona. He and his girlfriend were planning to marry in October. Then the pandemic hits.
Mm-hmm.
And then on a Monday, listen to this story, Jim. On a Monday, Hunter calls his mom and says, "Mom, I'm getting married Wednesday."
Oh, my goodness.
You can't fly. So she couldn't go out there and beat him with celery or anything.
Mm.
So it's just, okay. So we got to watch the virtual wedding in Phoenix, Arizona.
Goodness.
Yeah. And the youngest son, Cortland, is in Wilmington. He and his fiance are there and just enjoying life and just waiting to see what happens next.
Oh, that is great.
So life is full.
You're not kidding. And anymore, we don't know what's going to happen next, right?
No, we really don't. Well, Denise is on pins and needles with school.
Right.
Denise teaches middle school.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine, if you will, Jim, as the guy from Twilight Zone would say, imagine, if you will, a man doing a radio show in his boxers in his studio and his wife on a conference call with teachers.
Yeah.
And suddenly you walk through the house unbeknownst that they're all on video. So very quickly I learned to ask, may I walk through?
That is funny.
So there's a visual that scarred all the teachers for quite a while.
Oh, my goodness. It's
we've
definitely
enjoyed it.
a new way to do business.
Well, it is. And, it was very challenging for the, I feel sorry for the students. I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah.
These
so
are 10, 11, 12, 15-year-old kids whose lives have been turned upside down. You think it's traumatic for adults who know how to compartmentalize things. Imagine a child that has lost all his social capability of being with his friends and what is normal. There's so many kids that sometimes that may be the only meal of the day they're getting. I mean, it's just some harsh things going on that I never thought I would see in my lifetime, and pray that we can make some changes in the world that those things don't happen.
Amen. I'm with you on that, Pat.
Yeah, man.
So, hey, we're just about at the end of the podcast for today, Pat, but I thought that maybe is there anything else that you'd like to say to our listeners?
I appreciate all of you that have been kind enough to listen to the show, for Jim and Kim for supporting the show. I've been nominated multiple times for DJ of the Year, Syndicated Show of the Year, the Michael Branch Award. I feel like the Susan Lucci of the CDMAs. I know that I will never, ever win, and that's fine. Just getting the recognition and someone to walk up and say, I heard that interview that you did with Bill Pinkney about integration and segregation back in the day, and talking about Buddy Holly going in and buying a hamburger for Billy when Bill Pinkney could not go into a restaurant because he was black. And those kind of stories that just stand out.
Awful.
And I will forever remember Bill telling me that story. So it is my hope that we've all grown up since those days of the 60s when I was born, the 70s as I grew up and watched Vietnam stop and never understood what that was about.
Right.
So I just want to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart, and more importantly than anything, thank my wife Denise for caring, for loving all the Pat Gwinns that she gets. I mean, she never knows which one she's going to get from hour to hour. And Scott and Amy, I love you guys. Decker's a wonderful place to be. And Ray Scott does an amazing job. You know, DJs all over the country. My good buddy Justin Rouse, Jerry Hill, all those guys doing all they can to promote Carolina Beach music. They may do it differently than I do, but that's all right, because not everyone wants to drink chocolate milk. I sure don't want to drink eggnog or buttermilk.
That's right.
So however you get it, enjoy it and celebrate it. And, you know, that's always been my mission of the show, is celebrating the music of the Carolinas, the artists, the stories behind it. And if we can make somebody smile along the way, then it was a good day.
Amen to that. Well, hey, buddy, I got a question for you. I got actually two questions for you. These are my salty questions. When I have a new guest on the show, I always like to ask them. So here we go. What did you enjoy about living salty here in North Myrtle Beach?
What did I enjoy about living salty? Well, I got to talk to you, number one. I get to see your smiling face, your beautiful wife when I come to North Myrtle. You know, there's some wonderful people in North Myrtle Beach. And I got to give out a shout out to my dear, dear, dear friend, Jeff Cheney. And I know you know Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff is such a joy, and, you know, he's slowing down, but, you know, he called me yesterday. I was on the air on Cool Winds, and he calls me driving up to Greenville. He drives up and drives back down in the same day. 77 years old. He's listening to the show, and he's asking me to play, you know, flip flop and fly, and one scotch, one, you know, it's people like that that you just build bonds with and you care about and you fall in love with them. And that's what makes radio all about. And that's what living salty is all about. You build friendships that you never, ever would have had anywhere else.
That's right. It's so true. This area, there's something about this area.
Yeah.
All right. Got your second one
Question
here for
number
you.
2.
So what are you going to do for the rest of your day today?
I want to go to work. No. I am in the middle of a couple of projects, and I don't know that I told you this. I'm working on a book with Dr. John Stamey from Coastal Carolina University. It is the story of the Tams. Wow. We are in the middle of writing the biography of the Tams.
Cool.
So it is it's a labor of love. It's a lot of labor. There's some wonderful stories behind the scenes. Diane, the mom of Little Red, married to 2 of the Tams brothers. I mean, it's just, you're going to enjoy the book.
Oh, I think I will for sure.
You will.
Well, that's great.
And I think from there I may grab some orange juice because I think my Tito's may be lonely. And maybe I'll get an orange cupcake one day down the road from Miss Kim.
That's right. Yeah, the cupcake lady, right?
Yeah.
Listen,
Pat. I had
Pat.
to pull her ads off the air because she stopped making them.
Yeah, she likes the creativity of it. You know, she likes to create. She doesn't like the production side of it. She'd just as soon turn that over to someone. But she just likes to create new creations, you know, and cupcakes. Yeah. And it's neat when the kids' birthdays roll around, we get to see all that creativity. That's for sure.
Oh, man, that's wonderful.
So, Pat, how can our listeners reach you? Are you on Facebook? I'm on
Facebook, and I'm on Facebook, and I annoy everyone because I post all day, every day, as to where the show is airing, which show is on, and what station I'm on at that time. So feel free to go to facebook.com/Pat Gwinn, Gwinn. Send us a friend request. We'll make room for you. There's some I need to get rid of. And we'd love to have you in there. And there's a Pat Gwinn at the Beach Facebook page as well. You can go into the group settings for that. And there's one even called Friends of Pat Gwinn at the Beach. And then there's one called Friends of Pat Gwinn at the Beach. So I don't know who created that one, but that's probably the more popular one.
Cool.
So you can find us anywhere. And usually after this pandemic is over, my friend, we will be together.
Awesome. Can't wait. Well, listen, Pat, thanks so much for being on the show with us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you, buddy. Well, that's all for today's episode of the Salty Locals podcast. Thanks, folks, for listening, and thanks to our sponsor. And thank you, Pat Gwinn, for being my very special guest today. Join us again next week when we talk to a few more Salty Locals, and please subscribe and rate us 5 stars on iTunes, and tell your friends to listen in. And until next time, live salty, live local.
The Salty Locals podcast is sponsored by Jim Shorten Homes, serving all your real estate needs across the Grand Strand. Live salty, live local. Call Jim today at 301-503-2700. 301-503-2700. Jim Shorten Homes, a proud affiliate of Eagle Realty.